This is a Catholic and an atheist, or an atheist and a Catholic. I try to be fair to you. And alphabetical. Right?
Those are my concerns.
Mm-hmm.
Fairness and the alphabet.
Mm-hmm.
My larger concern, as we pointed out last week, is that the phrase atheist always makes me. It doesn't describe me accurately. That as we talked last week, agnostic, probably a better fit.
On some days.
On some days, yeah. When the nihilism is high, then I'm like, yeah, I'm an atheist, and other days I'm like, beautiful force pervades us all.
I think that that brings up another, and not the topic we went to, because we actually did get a comment on last week's show.
Did. Infuriating, I thought. just the worst comment ever.
Well, the fact that and we're saying, hey, if you want us to talk about something, we'll talk about it. And first off, I'm not a quantum physicist.
What was the answer? The answer was...
Well, he asked for genetics and string theory.
Yeah.
And the fossil record.
He might as well have said knitting. Like, could you guys talk about some crocheting or macrame? I'm just kidding. We know the guy who did it. I'm just teasing Adam.
Well, string theory, I can't get into that. Fossil records, I could do.
Yeah, string theory. I thought about, would I have anything to say about string theory? And clearly, I know very little about string theory, except that it's the idea that these things we thought of as points might actually be connected over space, and so you can do something to this molecule here. And another molecule miles away is affected.
Right, exactly.
And, if you were interested in trying to find a scientific reason for prayer and miracles and other spiritual things, I think that's where you'd start.
Sure.
Is how do we affect things that are apart from us?
Mm-hmm. Here's what's cool about being Catholic, and one of the things I love is you do not check your intelligence at the door. You don't check your questions even at the door. And while we believe in a creation story, we also believe in an intelligent designer that we don't believe in a 7-day literal, this was a week of time.
So you're saying we, and I guess I'm curious and have questions about that.
Me and Pope Francis.
Okay, so could I walk up to a Catholic on the street and say, do you believe in 7 days of creation? And to a man, they'd all say no? Or are you referring to...
I wish it was that clear cut when it comes to Catholic understanding, because there is a true Catholic understanding. And as a convert and someone who is a bit geeky about this type of stuff, I have literally read every word of that. I have consumed it. So that's not the case of every Catholic that you're going to encounter.
If I assume a priest is going to have an understanding on part, so any priest I go to, if I say 7-day creation to a man, they're going to say no?
I would say that they're going to say no.
I'm fascinated. That is not what I would have thought.
Yeah, I would say, let's put it this way, 90% of them at least. I would be willing to say almost all. But priests study 4 years of philosophy before they study theology. So they go through, they study all the classics, they get all of the foundation philosophically that they possibly can, that actually could turn them against their faith before they finish their philosophy degree, right? So they spend this 4 years of philosophy study that really challenges anything that they may have considered prior. Then after the foundational philosophical study, they go to school for theology. So they have an 8-year process of study. So yeah, I would let's put it this way. I don't know any priest who would say 7-day creation, that's it. They're going to embrace the understanding of the church that says that 7-day story may have been 70 million years.
Okay.
Or 700 million years.
Noah's Ark. Most priests believe in Noah's Ark as fact?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
As fact.
I would say we would accept it as fact from the sense that we believe that there was a flood and we believe that there was an ark.
A worldwide flood?
I don't know that we would say that it was global, nor would I think that anyone would say that absolutely every species of animal was on that boat.
Okay.
But I think we'd be willing to venture to say there was an event, because there are other recordings of that cataclysmic type of experience outside of Scripture, Christian Scripture, Jewish Scripture in this case. But again, if that's a stumbling block to someone, who cares? So what? Here's the tough stuff for us is, we take very literal the New Testament where Jesus talks about eating his flesh and drinking his blood and what happened at the Last Supper. All of that's the tough stuff. That's really hard. The one thing like Jonah, that's another one. This guy, we look at that story as possibly being legend more so than fact, just because of the way it's told and the literary style that it is. And that's okay. If that's what we're not so bent on everything being fundamentalistically verbatim out of the Old Testament. The switch, though, is when we get to the New Covenant, we do look at all of that as
so New Testament in its entirety, every bit of it true.
Absolutely, yeah, okay. Without question. Yeah, there's no legend in there unless we're just hearing the stories told by Jesus, which are parabolic in nature anyway, which we would accept to be.
So then, is it preferable if I were to pull out a Sports Illustrated swimsuit issue and throw it on the table? Is it preferable? Is it better? Is it to your benefit for you to rip out your eyes instead of look at that?
Well, so now when it comes to the literal, you've got to understand that, again, there are things that Jesus says that are parabolic in nature.
Sure.
So he uses a way of teaching, sometimes almost seeming hyperbolic, right? Something of that nature. So what he's saying is, because sin is what it is, because there's a separation when we go down that path, we are better to take extreme measures than to find ourselves falling into that. But fortunately, that's why we have things like reconciliation. That's why we have the opportunity.
So then the New Testament is approached by Catholics with interpretation. And I don't mean to be like that obvious, it is.
Yeah.
But it is not 100. I feel like I'm being... I don't want to be like coy. I'm not being coy. Obviously, you interpret. But...
well, that's a beautiful thing about being Catholic, because we have an interpretation. We have an interpreter, right?
Who is the interpreter?
Well, it's the magisterial teaching of the church. So
is that a person at a given time? Who represents that now?
Well, who represents it is the Holy Father. It's the Pope, who represents the protection of that. But we look at this as we compiled the book anyway, right? So we had the Torah, we had the Hebrew scriptures, and then when it came time to say what of this stuff that's floating around here from the first century, which had been floating around at that point for 300 or 400 years, what do we really put into this canon that is what we say it is? That's what the Catholic Church did. It was a Council of Carthage, Council of Hippo, and St. Augustine was a part of that.
Based on what Marcion had already got it. Like, they kind of looked at what he did and said, we really like his stuff.
No, I'm not familiar with that.
Okay,
well, that is.
He was just an early Christian.
Okay.
Who thought of as a heretic a lot by a lot of people.
Did he
because
compile a list of scripture?
He kind of what he put together, the list of what he said, here's scripture. When they actually came to start putting that together, they leaned heavily on what he had put together and said, we think he got pretty close. And so you look at the list he did.
Well, there were canons prior to.
Sure. And so he was the one that I guess when everybody started putting it together, they said, that guy got pretty close.
Maybe
Let's do it.
I'll have to dig and see.
Yeah, look at here. I've given you something to look
up. There you go. Yeah. So when was he around? What?
If I had to give you I would say later than first century, I would imagine, but I don't know for sure.
Because we didn't really have the true canon until 4th century. Right.
And so, I'm just going now. Do we have it?
Do we
miss any? Did we miss anything?
No, I think we can be. Since the 4th century, I think we can trust that it's there. There have been these other writings that have shown up from time to time that didn't make the canon.
Do you think there are things that a first century, is there stuff Paul read that he would have considered Scripture, or at least necessary or important that we don't have?
It's a good question. I think that we could always assume that there are some things that didn't survive, just because of the nature of what we're talking about. But I don't think there's any deficiencies with what we have.
Yeah, the reason here's what I always think about, and this isn't that I want to make sure this doesn't feel like I'm doing a gotcha thing, where
that's what this is about.
Exactly. Let me catch you.
That's why you're an atheist or an agnostic.
Whatever the book is that Paul talks about, where he's talking to women in church, and he's like, keep your heads 5. Covered.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Because of the angels.
Oh, okay.
And I think it is Ephesians, actually.
But maybe, yeah. I thought you were going to go with the traditional submissive wives submit to husbands. But go ahead.
No, I don't want to talk about that crap. Where he's, keep your heads covered, and then some versions actually leave it out, and he says because of the angels.
Right.
And everybody's like, what does that mean? What does that mean?
Right.
Well, in one of the I'm trying to think. It's one of the apocryphal books, and I can't remember which one it is. I've gone completely blank.
That's all right.
Making myself look super dumb here. Mm-hmm. But basically, a man is taken on a tour of heaven. Amos. He's taken on, I think it's Amos.
Maybe.
Taken on a tour of heaven, and he's shown all these different kinds of angels. And there's a class of angel called the Watcher. And he specifically is told these angels get really turned on when they see human hair. And if they see a woman's hair uncovered, they will go and mate with this woman, and then the kids are giants.
Well, we see that in the Old Testament.
Yeah, the Nephilim, yeah. And so I guess my feeling is Paul was clearly operating with that information as a part of his theology.
Yes.
Not just folklore, but his theology. He's telling women, here's how you go to church, because if you do it improperly, you're going to get knocked up by an angel.
Well, and that's why the Catholic...
That seems like pretty important information to have. Like if it's true, if Paul believed it, it seems like we should know that.
Right.